I'm kind of curious. I mean, how do you go from finance to, I guess I don't know exactly what you do at UCan now. You mentioned um, bringing UCan more into the triathlon world. So what specifically are you doing at the company?
hmm So I'm the director of the triathlon business at UCan, which means that my role is mostly marketing. I'm mostly raising education and awareness of UCan in the triathlon world. So right now, education and awareness of UCan in the triathlon world is not that high. Like
Hmm.
it's bigger in the running space, and that's mainly a kind of a coincidental thing. Like we had ever since our founding about 9 or 10 years ago, we've had Meb Keflezighi using UCan, and he
Hmm.
was using it before it was even a brand, before it was even a company. He was getting it in like white plastic bags, and I'm sure that was kind of sketchy. It was white powder, but you know he was one major asset and still is one major asset for our firm, and a number of other assets um, and influencers that have driven popularity of UCAN in running have helped. And it's also because of the fact that the company, the people that work at the company, had a lot of expertise in running. They knew the space well, but they didn't know triathlon as well.
Hmm.
So um, once, last year, a venture capital firm, the venture capital arm of Kellogg, invested money in our company.
Hmm.
So we now finally have resources to play with, not to
Hmm.
play with, resources to invest, to devote to the growth of the company.
Right.
And one of the ways that they've done that is by hiring me so that we can enter the triathlon world in a meaningful and significant way. So our three main focuses are running, which is our biggest segment, fitness, and triathlon.
So does that mean that you're heading out to expos and shaking hands, or are you like directing people to do all these activities?
Yeah, great question. So it's my main role is the directing of where those marketing efforts are going to go. There's
Hmm.
all sorts of ways that we can be in front of the right people. We want to reach the right people at the right time and deliver the right message so that they understand what UCAN is and why it's compelling for them to use in their endeavors, their athletic endeavors.
Hmm.
That's the main goal that I'm trying to accomplish. And those methods could be setting, my purpose here is to put together the plan as to what approach we're going to take to get in front of those people in the right way with the right message. And that might be expos, like some combination of expos, of race sponsorships, of
Hmm.
sponsoring high level athletes. It might be using social media and content on social media, or it could be email marketing campaigns. Could be developing content with some influencers and bringing on coaches and nutritionists who know and understand the product, and we can support them and raise a following through their influence in the
Hmm.
world of triathlon. Ambassador program we have right now could be utilized in even a bigger way to grow the presence of UCAN and Tri.
Hmm. So, as a numbers guy, since I'm more familiar with like digital marketing and a lot of what the digital marketers talk about, and it's all about metrics. Like you're designing this particular sales funnel, however convoluted they can get, as I'm sure you're aware, they can be very, very complicated because people are complicated and they enter funnel at all kinds of stages. I mean, are you sitting there and actually trying to track metrics from all those kind of things, at the expo visit from the ambassadors? Do you look at all the numbers or is it, I'll say softer than that?
Mhm. We try to make it as concrete as possible, and we are measuring a lot. And the measurements dictate to us how successful each of the, like we can look at those measurements and see how successful each of those approaches are
Mhm.
in terms of a cost benefit analysis and how scalable it could be, and
Right.
then deploy those in the way that is going to get us the most new users and the most loyal customers and people who are just UCAN fans. We want them to be diehard fans, like they
Mhm.
understand what it does and why it's compelling for them, and they just want to keep coming back for more because it's amazing and it's making their they're hitting their goals, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we're very much measurement based, and we're using that as indications of what our approach should be, what
Okay.
the mix should be.
So actually, that kind of leads me to where we can go back and say like, what is UCAN,
Yeah,
and what, why is it important? Why does it matter?
Yeah, we should probably talk about that, huh? There's probably some listeners who are like, "What the hell is this stuff?" And they're
Yeah.
like zoning out already. So, yeah, UCan is a complex carbohydrate, or what underlies UCan is called superstarch, and it's a complex carbohydrate that gives you energy without the spike and crash that you get from sugar. So well, all of the sports nutrition products out there are some form of a simple sugar. It's either most of them, a lot of them are maltodextrin, which is considered complex, but it's really a pretty simple sugar, very simple sugar compared to what superstarch is. Or they're fructose, or they're glucose, or they're some very simple sugar, smaller complex molecule, or a smaller carbohydrate molecule that for many people causes issues in their races. So
Mm.
I'll use my own story as an example, and the reason why I'm such a believer in it. For my first 4 Ironman events, I used the conventional approach. I was trying to take in about 300 calories, twice my body weight in calories worth of worth of calories per hour. That's
Hmm.
what I was told is like a good rule of thumb. So I'm trying to take in 300 calories per hour, and I was only able to manage something like 230 calories per hour during my first 4 Ironmans because I would get to like my ninth gel, and I'm like, I just don't want this anymore.
Hmm.
It sickens me just to look at this thing because I've had 8 of them already.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but I suggest
Yeah, I definitely have
many
with
have.
sports drinks that have a sweet flavor. Like the sports drink I use now is a tart lemon lime, and it doesn't bother me near as much because of the tartness, I think.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I tried all of them. Like I used, it sounds like maybe you're using Scratch or something, but
It's
I tried
EFS, but
EFS. Okay,
yeah,
that was actually the one I was using right before I made the switch to UCAN.
yeah.
EFS, Scratch, Gatorade Endurance, like you name it, I tried it. I was
Hmm.
using Goo, I was using the blocks, like everything I've tried.
Hmm.
And it all kind of did the same thing because they're all under, what underlies them is essentially the same thing. It's a simple sugar.
Yeah.
And so I had issues like GI issues, stomach aches, bloating, you know, in the porta potty when that's not a good idea when you're supposed to be running a marathon.
Hmm.
All those issues, and I had issues during my first 4 Ironmans, majorly in 2 of them, walking parts of the marathon, obviously not living up to my performance that I know I could do. And
Hmm.
then 2 of them, I had relatively minor issues to the point where I was able to run okay, like well enough to do well enough, right? To get like to Kona in 2013, I was able to qualify using this conventional approach. And then in 2014, I finally said, I'm done playing this Russian roulette. I've trained so hard for these events, and it's a 50-50 whether I'm going to do terrible because of my nutrition. I just want, and what UCAN allowed me to do, and teaching my body how to burn fat better as well, through
Hmm.
metabolic efficiency training. Through those 2 things, I was able to avoid any GI distress and I've had no bonking issues since I started using that approach.
Hmm.
And it allowed my fitness. And so in 2014, I won Ironman Maryland. That was using UCAN, and what I found is that I was trained and I was fit and I was ready. And in that instance, my nutrition didn't hold me back. It allowed my fitness to express itself in my racing, and that's what I had been looking for. And I was able to do really, really well at Ironman Maryland. I chopped off 51 minutes on my PR. I had gone 9:42 at Louisville, and then I went 8:51 at Ironman Maryland, won the race, ran a 3 flat marathon, and then the next year I was top amateur at Eagleman, and I was 6th overall. So I had beaten 9 pros and lost to 5. And then in Kona I was 72nd overall, and that was all during Kona. I actually only had 68 calories an hour of UCAN, only UCAN, during that entire race.
Hmm.
And at Ironman Maryland I was 94 calories an hour. Um, so that really opened my eyes to the fact that you can avoid GI distress, you can avoid bonking, use UCAN. It's
Hmm.
incredible.
So, I mean, I did a little bit of research on UCAN, although not super in depth. So, like, can you tell us a little bit more about like what is Superstretch? Like, how is it made? Where does it come from? Like,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, I'll start
how
right
do
with
we
that.
get to where we are? I guess.
Yeah, UCAN or superstarch is a complex carbohydrate, right? And it's made from non-GMO cornstarch.
Hmm.
They take non-GMO cornstarch and they cook it over 40 hours. So just using heat and water, it's an all-natural process,
Hmm.
and it elongates the carbohydrate molecule a lot to the point where it's becomes superstarch, and it goes into your stomach very quickly. It absorbs very quickly into your stomach, but then it releases energy at a slower rate into your system. And the foundings of it, I love the founding of the company and our origin story. It has noble origins. It's not some corporation, greedy corporation that wants to make money off of triathletes because they know that triathletes have money.
Hmm.
It was a company that was created for these kids who have a rare metabolic disorder. So our founder's son is named Jonah, and he has this disorder. And what it means is that he needs to be fed cornstarch, like Argo cornstarch off the shelf, every 2 hours in
Hmm.
order to keep his blood sugar stable, day and night. And it's life-threatening. So if overnight his parents miss an alarm and they sleep through it and they miss a feeding, he could have seizures and die. Very, very stressful for the parents. The kid is obviously not living a normal life. And Jonah dealt with that for 9 years until a carbohydrate breakthrough was made through some scientists that Jonah's parents were able to engage, and they found a solution. They had this carbohydrate breakthrough, which they created Superstarch,
Hmm.
and now Jonah can have the equivalent of 2 packets of UCan before he goes to bed, and he can have a full night's sleep, 8 hours straight.
Hmm.
When he was 9 years old, it was the first time he ever had a full night's sleep, 8 hours straight, and his parents too, probably.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can't even imagine the level of fatigue that you're dealing with at that point. Like, not to make light of the situation, but just trying to wrap my head around it because it's like if I went 2 nights, 3 nights, and I said in college I had trouble sleeping. It's just this like the irritability creeps up, and you become almost like a different person without without proper amount of sleep. So just like for a kid to go through that, it's always worse when kids have to go through anything because that should be like a time when it's kind of a trope, but like a time of innocence, where like you
yeah,
don't you shouldn't have to deal with that kind of stuff as a
right.
kid. Like
He didn't do anything wrong to deserve this. Like
right,
he's a perfectly, good, nice little kid. He's nothing, do you feel terrible for him?
yeah. Um, so it's kind of I think you already really addressed this, but it's like what I was curious about was like the digestion time. Since it's like it seems like typically longer chain carbohydrates take longer to digest, so it seems like it's a relatively quick digestion period and then a long release. So that's why it doesn't spike your insulin.
Yeah, so actually the longer the carbohydrate molecule, the lower the osmolality, which means it goes into your system faster,
Oh,
into
okay.
your gut faster.
Okay.
Once it's into your system, I understand it'll release the energy into your system at a slower rate because it takes time to break down that carbohydrate molecule.
Okay. Okay. Um, so you're saying that the founders of the company had were they associated with these scientists or that were working on this this study or like it's there's so many scientists working on so many things. I was just kind of curious, like, why were they even doing the research that would have led to this? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't want to get it wrong,
Well,
the
that's
origin
fair.
story, and I got to talk to my CEO again. Her name is Shoba Morales. She's an impressive person, and
Hmm.
I have to talk to her again to make sure I have all the details straight in my head. But I know the crux of it was that Jonah's parents engaged with some scientists, and it ultimately was some scientists in Scotland that were the ones that discovered this
Yeah.
process of elongating the molecule and therefore producing what is superstarch, which is what underlies UCAN.
Yeah. Well, it's like to me, that's like this is an aside, but it's almost like validation for why we do science. Like, we as humans, we explore and do all these things that not don't necessarily have direct connections, but sometimes there's these like tangential discoveries that bring about something that's a solution to a problem that we didn't know there was a solution. So it's kind of neat on top of being very practically helpful to people with this disorder, like the whole process of how that even happens. It wasn't just, oh, they have this disorder, we need to find a solution. It was like a very roundabout way of it all coming together.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, um, Matt, if people want to follow you, I know your blog's slowed down a little bit since 2017, but I'm hoping as you get back into trading, it'll pick back up.
Yeah.
If people want to follow you, where can they find you?
So yeah, I mean, my website's a great place to just check out, more about me, and it also has links to my Instagram, which is at Iron Matt Bach. and Facebook. You can find me on there as well. I'm on Twitter as well. I think it's the same handle. It's at Iron Matt Bach. And that's probably the best places to find me. Also, I can share with you for the notes a code if people want to try UCan.
Okay.
And I can give it to you now too. So the code is Smart Athlete, and it'll be for 15% off if they want to give it a shot.
Okay. I'll ask you this question, but I'm gonna take a stab. I already know the answer. I ask everybody the same question because it varies so wildly.
I'm excited.
If you could only eat one thing for recovery for the rest of your life, what do you choose?
Well, I think I'd be remiss to say anything but UCan, right?
Right. I was like, we've just been talking about this. This seems like a pretty, almost like a teed up question. Like,
right.
What's it going to be? But I have to ask just because it's anything.
Yeah, but in this case, though, we haven't really talked about. UCan does have a protein enhanced, 2 different flavors that are protein enhanced, so chocolate and vanilla cream. So my choice would be the vanilla cream flavor. Medblikes the chocolate flavor, but I like the vanilla cream flavor even more. So I would have that as my recovery drink.
Good deal. Thanks for coming on today, Matt.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.